Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Ready Real Estate and Divorce Plus You. And today we're excited to welcome another guest, Sunny Connolly. Today we're going to be talking about health insurance. Sunny is an employee benefits specialist and provides is a health insurance broker. And this comes up a lot, regardless of whatever industry you're in, whether it comes up a lot in my line of business as a divorce attorney with divorces and people needing to get their own health insurance if they had been dependent on a spouse's, and we can get more on in depth on that. But also, whether you own a business or an entrepreneur and you need to provide health insurance, whether for yourself or your employees, or maybe you're shopping and comparing health insurance and health benefits that you could receive if you were to purchase them on your own versus what's offered through your employer. Sunny's the guy to talk to. Sunny, will you please tell us a little bit about yourself? And thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Sure. Thank you. My name's Sunny Connolly. My firm does benefit consulting pretty much all over the country. That's your group medical, dental, vision, life, and disability on the group platform. I've been in the business since 1995. I've been around for a little while, so I've seen it when, let's just say that the medical rates were close to where the dental rates were as far as the insurance. So it's been quite a while, and it's been a large transition as far as how prices have changed and how plans have redone themselves. But I guess I'm more here to just talk about insurance. So feel free to ask me any kind of questions that you guys want to ask me about insurance related types of things. When I got licensed, they said 96% of people know less than you know about insurance. And I had just passed the exam at that particular time. So there you go. Perfect example.
It's very true.
Hey, no, I'm a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, as soon as I get that packet from our employer, I'm just reading through it and I phase out. Even though I'm good with contracts, it just not good.
So first thing for you is you want to look at out-of-pocket max. That's the number one thing. There's a line item there that's listed that says out-of-pocket max. That's going to be your worst case scenario. You get $1 million claim, how much do you have to pay? Then you want to look at it for you, and then you want to look at it for your husband. Because if I'm assuming you have a family coverage, correct? Mm-hmm. So then you guys have family coverage. If that's the case, then you want to see what that maximum out-of-pocket limit is for you guys. That's your catastrophic. And so what I tell people is figure that out and then take that number and divide it by 12. Figure out how much money you need to put away just in case something like that happens.
Also create your own health savings plan.
Yes, in a sense, it's a savings plan.
And you can also call it an emergency savings as well.
Yep. That's the first thing you should definitely do. Because in 2013, they passed laws that stated that there were caps to how much the insurance company can charge you for things outside of premium. Actual medical expenses.
That's a good idea.
So that's the first thing you want to do, be able to identify that. And just because we were talking about 1099s, there are ways that you can get 1099s insured even if you own a business.
So that's what I was going to, and we need to talk after this because coming out of my divorce 10 years ago, no insurance, I had to go on the marketplace, which was a good situation then because I hadn't started working in real estate. I had basically no money, so it was great. But the first year I did great in real estate, I got hit with having to pay that whole thing back. Thank you guys for helping me refinance that year because it was terrible. So it's like, what is your take on the whole? I know it probably helps for people that maybe know their income. Like mine's different every year. With that, that's my challenge. Is they're like, well, how much are you going to make this year? Well, as much as I can. I don't know. So that burned me that year. Right. So someone like me coming out of a divorce, because we work with a lot of divorced people who maybe is in that situation. I'd love to hear your take on, if you work with the marketplace, if you have a workaround, what is there a strategy session?
Yeah. So first thing is that when you have to deal with the marketplace, I just want everybody to know that rates are only going to go up. Plans are actually going to start to deteriorate more and more. So you're going to see what we call gaps and holes. And I'll explain it like this, and it's kind of simple to see. Let's just say that you yourself went out and bought a plan and you were paying, $500 a month for it, right? Well, let's just say that you had a $50,000 claim. How long is it going to take the insurance company to get their money back?
Ooh, a while.
Let's say you guys were all part of a corporation, even a corporation of 4 people, all right? You sign up, you go get insurance. They can rate you a little bit different. What's the likelihood that they're going to get their money back if you have a $50,000 claim within a group? Get back a lot faster, right? So why would you make the rates more advantageous on one side as opposed to the other? So that's essentially why I always tell people, as soon as you can, get a group of 2, get people together. And in fact, let's just say Jeff wanted to start a company and he wanted to hire his first employee. He you can do that. One employee, as long as they're W-2, you can get started on a group plan. That same person goes to the marketplace, assuming that they make more than, say, $44,000 or $50,000, to where they don't get any kind of the subsidies for something. Apples to apples, that same plan might cost $550, and it may cost $300 and something on a group. So that's a $200 savings, and pay for it pre-tax also. You're paying on the exchange just post-tax.
Right.
So you've already been taxed on that money. Whereas if you run it through a group, pre-tax, you can run it through, you can do FSAs, you do it kids. So that means you can front the money to pay for deductibles, pay for childcare. And then over here, any of your premium cost share that you'd run through the company, you'll get that out of your gross amount. So that'll be pre-tax also.
So as a 1099 though, my daughter just got licensed. Let's say I put her on my quote team.
Okay.
She's still a 1099.
Okay.
She's not going to get a W-2 from me because it's better for us to run everything through the split it with her. I wouldn't be able to do what you're talking about unless I have a W-2. Like if I have an admin that's a W-2, then am I eligible to do this?
I'll explain how we worked around that. So for a real estate company, because I have some real estate companies, I have some insurance firms that as long as they have one W-2 employee, everybody else is 1099.
Even if I'm not a
and
W-2.
participate in the plan. You as the owner don't have to participate in it.
Okay.
You just need one W-2 person
Okay.
that works for you. Everybody else can be 1099.
Okay.
And they can
Part-time
participate
or
in the plan.
full-time W-2?
Doesn't matter. See, and that's people always get confused about that. You're allowed to determine and dictate as the owner of the company who's eligible for benefits. There's no way I could tell Jeff, nope, he only worked so many hours unless it's written down in that specific employment guide. He's part-time, so he's not eligible for benefits. He's full-time, he's eligible for benefits. Think about it like this. In municipal groups, you've got like firefighters, right? Firefighters might work for 24 hours straight for 7 days a week, right? And then they take a week and a half off for stuff, right? Well, how do you figure out whether they're part-time or full-time? Because that week, they're not working. So what are they? So as an organization, you determine who's eligible for benefits for the rules.
Now, let's touch base on divorcing and splitting up health insurance. Going back to that's a huge discussion. I would actually be nervous going into a divorce thinking about what am I going to do about health insurance. I have a girlfriend whose child has an immune disorder, and that's her biggest thing. She is leaving the husband with the insurance that covered that specific, and it's very unique, immune disorder. And now she's going off on her own and is petrified.
Yeah. Well, let Sunny get into that. But in divorces, here's the thing. So most of the time, the couple gets benefits through one person or the other, and sometimes maybe through their employment or their business that they own or whatever it may be. Well, after your divorce is final, you're no longer covered. And I think there's a certain short period of grace, period of time that's a grace period, but usually I think it's that month, and Sunny could talk more specific on that. But we tell our clients from the very beginning of divorce, start talking to somebody about getting your own insurance, see what it looks like, whether you get COBRA, which I believe it's 2 or 3 years that you're allowed
18 months.
18 months that you're allowed to get. But sometimes COBRA, which I'll let Sunny explain more about also, but that could end up being more expensive than getting your own plan. And I think I mentioned I've known Sunny for a very, very long time. Sunny's a very close friend and also a trusted expert and advisor, and somebody that I feel comfortable sending my clients to. And Sunny, even though the bulk of what he does, my understanding is large corporations and serving employees of them, he's always willing to answer the phone call, always been there for my clients, always been there for me, and would be able to run different types of scenarios and figure out which one makes the most sense, because you can't wait until the divorce is final and then be stuck without health insurance or not have something
And
covered.
then talk about it
Yeah,
at that
or people
point.
think that they can continue to do it. I know something people used to do a long time. Actually, when I was still in law school, I used to hear of this, is that people would do what's called a separate maintenance agreement as opposed to an actual divorce in order to still be covered if people were older in age or had which pre-existing conditions, and I don't know if that's still a thing or not, and Sunny could talk more about that. But for issues like that, situations like that, people would get a legal separation, which is called a separate maintenance agreement, as opposed to a divorce. Well, I think what happened was insurance companies eventually caught on, and now most of the policies, if I'm not mistaken, include the legal separation as a reason to no longer cover the spouse anymore. So these are things that, and this is why I wanted to bring Sunny on today and to talk about this, because everybody, whether you're currently going through a divorce or considering a divorce, health insurance is something to think about. It's not a reason to deter anything. It's not scary, and somebody like Sunny can make it simple and easier to understand for all of us. But again, I recommend doing it as soon as possible and figuring it out. And sometimes there's situations to where, say, your spouse gets health insurance and you're not getting divorced, you're married, but your spouse gets health insurance, but maybe you guys could buy it at a better rate and potentially have better coverage, or vice versa. So, Sunny,
No, yeah, you're good. First thing
A lot
is,
of information.
no, it's simple. First thing is that we always follow the divorce decree. So whatever divorce decree says is whatever the rules and stuff that we stayed by. A lot of times Jeff's calling me, he goes, hey, I'm working on this. How old's the person? Give me a price so that he can work it in to the negotiation for the divorce. So he might call me and say, hey, I have this lady. She's asked how much is insurance going to cost her for like the next 3 years. So we'll figure that out, do an estimate of 3 years or whatever it is for it.
And sometimes because we can negotiate that the spouse potentially pay, whether it be through spousal support or it be an additional amount to cover their own separate health insurance for a certain period of time. Now, I rarely have seen it go on forever or extended period of time, but sometimes that helps in budgeting also when determining spousal support, because child support and we'll get into this on another show, but follows a strict formula in Michigan. Spousal support is not mandatory, but it's based on a number of different factors. And one of the factors is potentially what's the monthly budget, what's the estimated monthly budget, what are the necessities. So we like to get an idea of how much health insurance is going to cost ahead of time, so that way we can figure that out in negotiating what our client needs a month. But
No, that's good. And so you want to touch on the pre-existing thing. There is no pre-existing clauses for anything anymore. There may be some questionnaires that people might ask as far as stuff. And in certain carriers, you might have a couple of questions where they look at height, weight, family history, and some of those other things. But majority of carriers, no pre-existing question. You could have full on whatever, go and sign up. I'll give you an example. I had a client who owns a bunch of restaurants, never put in insurance, has a bunch of employees. Her son had a ATV accident up north, fell on his head, now has terminal types of brain issues, I should say. I mean, he's starting to get better as far as things. Literally, it happened. Within 30 days, had them set up on the very best plan, no questions asked whatsoever, and they had full coverage, everything moving forward.
Oh, wow.
So there is a possibility. Now, keep in mind, that's in a group plan. All right. Individuals, a little different. We have timelines. You know, you've got open enrollment for October, and I think the 15th of January is the cutoff for February 1st. For everyone's individual. The only time you can get on individual plans would be you need to have divorce, childbirth, marriage, move out of state, all those types of things, what we call credible events.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Sounds like, I think a lot of times people, as they step towards divorce, I'm sure it's not they just wake up one day. It'd be good to have these conversations going in like 6 months, like well before you file. So it's so intimidating. The entire insurance industry, I mean, everything, all industries that are government regulated feel like they're dysfunctional to a degree, but just to wrap your head around that, and not to mention, most importantly, the cost and keep yourself protected is just seems immense. So what do you recommend for people that are considering?
So my number one proponent is that insurance is just a propensity to pay a bill. All right, that's it. That's all it is, right? I tell people you should be more concerned about who your doctors, your physicians, and who you're going to see with your medical staff, because that'll directly impact your health more so than any kind of financial arrangement with anyone. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people, if you have to go in and get surgery, who's the best doctor to see you at a particular place? And then where do you get it done? There's something called transparency, to where you're actually able to see what the cost would be at, say, Beaumont or U of M or St. John's or St. Joe's or whoever it may be, Ascension now. You can see all those types of things. So that's the thing that you really need to focus on, is who's the best person to go to. The insurance company, 90% of the time, they're going to cover it, regardless of whatever it is. But those long-term costs could affect you long-term as far as whatever doctor that you ended up picking for stuff. So that's the thing that I always tell people to really focus in on, is who's your doctor? Who are you going to see? Are they solving the issues, or are they not? Now, in a group plan with those types of things, I see a merit of doctors who perform a lot of different surgeries and at a bunch of different costs. Those are the variables that I have to use now to go to bat to them for a renewal, to try to get their costs reduced, or look at other carriers or certain types of things with stuff. But it all really starts from who you choose to go seek services with. Because Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, doesn't matter. It's just a propensity for them to pay that particular bill with stuff. I always tell people, make sure you have your correct physicians, because there's no point you going to see someone and you're going to end up going back to see them again because they didn't get the surgery right. Now, again, that's your cost. That's continue to go up. They're putting in policies now that talk about proficiency as far as doctors having to eat those costs if they have to go back for a certain period of time. But that's something that I always tell people to start with.
Well, how do you, I mean, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but how do you research it? Like you as an health insurance provider, where do you start to research that stuff? Because I know it's really intimidating.
You have a broker, you call them.
Call the broker.
That's what we do.
All right.
All day long, that's what we do.
I've never called my insurance broker before, so that's...
Who is our insurance broker?
She doesn't
I
know
don't
who it
even know.
is.
See, that's the other thing, is that you need to have a relationship with them, because they can tell you about why this is better and why this is good, and if there's something that's better for you or whatever's out there. Because as your family changes, then your dynamics may change. You guys, unless you say, God forbid, one of you guys come down with some kind of an ailment, maybe you're on an HMO plan right now, right? But it's time for us to change and maybe put you on a PPO, because there's a specialist who goes to see it who is at U of M and only accepts PPO plans for whatever reason. All right. So maybe it might be time for you to take a look at those. So everything we say, it's custom tailored, but it can be actually individual tailored as far as what you want. I'll give you another example. Let's just say you have 4 people. Each one of those people could be on a completely different plan that fits them. You might have someone who's 21 years old. They just want a high deductible $6,000 plan. Just say they got insurance because they're in their immortal phase, right? You got someone else, they got some chronic issues. They're in their late 50s. They need a $250 deductible. You got someone else that's middle of the road. They have a family, but they only want an HMO because it's more cost effective and they're good with the $2,000 deductible. Every plan is set up, designed, and you can now pick and choose which ones make more sense for you. And then as a business owner, your offerings now are something that's completely different. You make the plans more marketable to your employees. So I've got clients right now that they tell me, they go, Sunny, I'm so glad that you set up these plans for us, that we've got some of the best plans around, because their retention strategy for their employees is that they stay. They can't go anywhere else because the plans are so good that when they go somewhere else, they're like, no, I can't. I mean, so I teach my HR people how to use the plan as a benefit for them moving forward to build their businesses. Because it's like this thing that people don't see until they actually need it. And then they're like, oh, wow, this is interesting. I didn't know why we only have 90% of our staff is staying and maybe 10% of people might leave.
That's interesting. I never really think about it that way. But
so you always want to look at it from a different perspective as far as what's working for you. And your organization may be different than some other organization where people are just transient and that's just how they are. Or you may have places where they don't offer any insurance whatsoever. And just for the simple fact that you offer insurance might be something that's good for people. So again, one of the first things I ask is, what are you trying to do for your business? And then they'll say, yeah, we need to keep these people. We're losing people. We're hiring people. And then I break every company into a different phase. Are you in growth mode? Are you in retention mode? Where are you at specifically, right? And if they say they're in retention mode, okay, let's look within what you have right now and see what people are looking to get out of it. And sometimes HR, I go, hey, HR, can you just listen to what people are complaining about? And we'll see how to tailor these plans for New Year when we do the open enrollment. And we can kind of boost up things or change stuff or increase certain types of things. Or if you're just barely making it, we got to figure out some kind of financial strategy arrangements that we can do. Maybe we need to put people into HRAs or HSAs or some other type of model that gives the perception that they have better coverage than what they actually do, but you have the financial means that if something does happen, that it's still covered the same way as it would be before. So every company's different. I mean, when I get thrown into situations and stuff, I have no idea what's going to happen with things. I have to sit down and ask a bunch of questions. So, yeah.
No, we usually go the PPO route, but it seems to me in this day and age now, there's more of a personal opinion than as we go into, because the cheaper is the HMO and doing the HSA on top of that, just because I like the HSA because a lot of times the chiropractic care is not covered under, but you can use that with your HSA fund.
Let's talk about what an HSA is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For people that don't know, what are all these acronyms?
Because I was going to ask what you could use money for.
No problem. Any qualified medical expense. And there's a list.
What about supplements? So I go to a functional med doc, and he has me on certain things based on testing I've had done, and they're supplements, so they're not FDA approved. But I never have to go to the doctor. usually because of everything I've done. So I don't know like what the parameters are there because I'm a lot of
Without
holistic.
speaking out of term, probably not, but I'm not
Usually
sure.
not, yeah.
I'm not sure. And I can check the list and see
Okay.
exactly what would be a qualified HSA expense.
But
Chiropractic
HSA
would be
stands
on a
Oh, yeah,
for
sorry.
Yeah.
Health savings accounts.
Okay. Which is
So let's just put it this way. Remember how I gave you guys that example of that employee that had a $6,000 deductible, the young person, right? There's something called HSA qualified plans. Those HSA qualified plans are filed, say, with Blue Cross with the state of Michigan. All right. Those HSA plans have a high deductible plan. That means you have typically no coverage whatsoever until you hit that $6,000 deductible. Okay. So that means you've got to spend. So, for example, your office visit, maybe $20 if you go somewhere. It's not. It's going to be $90 to maybe $150 because you're going to have paid the real price of what the actual charge would be for it. Okay. Then deductible. Well, yeah, your deductible $6,900. You go to the emergency room, whatever they want to charge you at the emergency room. There is no fee schedule per se for anything. There's a negotiated price between the insurance company and that particular carrier or pharmacy or whatever it might be, but you do not have anything that's transparent as far as what that exact cost is going to be. There's no known cost. So you're building towards that $6,000. The advantage of that is that you can now deduct $6,000 off of your income. So you remember how I told you set aside that money?
Yes.
Now, let's say you made $100,000, $6,000. Now you're only going to be taxed on $94,000. And if you're over age 55, there's a catch-up provision and some other stuff as far as things.
But you need that health savings account for that write-off.
In order for you to put away the money into an HSA account, you need something like that. That's correct.
Okay.
Isn't there some long-term? I probably can't even answer this because we're not accountants. So, taxation, as far as like if you carry that forward into future years, where
Nope. Stays there. It's your money. Your employer can give you money for your HSA account, and it's your money from the moment they send it over.
okay,
Does it expire?
Nope. You're
calendar year?
thinking about what's called an FSA, which is a
Okay.
flexible spending account. That's where you pledge money
Okay.
on things. Those expire, and then they revert back to the employer.
Okay.
so
Yes.
back to two more acronyms, and
Yeah,
then I've
go
got
ahead.
another question
Go
for you. But the PPO and
Oh, sorry. PPO, HMO.
HMO.
All right.
Explain what those
Yep,
mean.
simple. PPO. Go anywhere you want to go straight to Johns Hopkins, go to Cedars-Sinai, go to Oxford, go wherever you want to go. All right. PPO means you can go see whoever you want to, whenever you want to. There's something called in-network benefits, which are those that are directly contracted with the carrier. And then there's out-of-network ones. And believe me, there are some people who do not take, they take insurance, but they don't have contracts with particular carriers. Okay. You can go see anyone you want to. In an HMO product, you have to get a referral for some carriers. For example, Blue Cross you do, HAP you don't. So you have to get a referral, but you have to stay within that particular network of doctors who are only contracted with that particular carrier.
and
And
that's
so
who we have as HAP.
And so that's
okay.
that's important going back from your first advice. What does your doctor take? Where do you want to go? So circling back to me sounds like that conversation of know who your doctor is, what kind of health care you want in case you want that PPO.
I will tell you this. If a person comes to me, first thing I ask them is, okay, how do you use the plan? And I tell people keep at least a 2 to 3 year log of all your claims from the prior years, because that way that gives me an idea of where you're spending your costs at. Then we go out and we find a plan that you're going to be a benefactor of, as opposed to just a payer into the plan, a benefactor of for those particular issues that you had in the past. So I'll give an example. Let's just say a person takes prescription drugs and they have a particular known script. They might, on an individual plan, they might be paying $150 for that because that's just what it is because you have an individual plan and it'll limit you. Let's say you got a type 4 and it's capped out at $200 per script, okay?
Inhalers, huge.
Right, whatever
They're
it
the
might be.
worst, most
Really?
expensive.
In a group plan, it might only be $40. Or at highest, it could be $80, depending upon what the type of plan is. That's a simple thing. And depending on now, next thing I'll ask you is how often you go and get that script. You get it 12 times a year, we can sit down and do math and figure out things. Then we got to look at the premium difference. Okay, cost X over here, cost X over here. Let's figure out what the difference is. How much are you saving or how much more do you have to pay? But if you pay this more, how much of a benefit are you getting now by paying an additional dollar for those particular items?
It's a really smart way to actually do it instead of just grabbing a plan because you think, because you know, we're all in sales, a lot of us, and it's like, I feel like people want to sell to you instead of really what you do. It sounds like you actually listen.
I can't do that.
Yeah, you
because
listen.
I don't want to get that phone call from them saying, hey,
Right.
how come da-da-da, and how come this is not happening, or what's going on with those types of things.
Yeah.
Never want to get that phone call.
Yeah, and I've had that happen where someone said, hey, you're a real estate agent. We have this great plan for you. Told me all my doctors were covered. I didn't read all the paperwork. None of my doctors were covered.
Happens all the time.
Nothing was, I had to switch back. And it was like terrible. Like they wanted $400 for an inhaler. And I'm like, well, I guess someone's going to be choking over here because I'm not paying $400 a month for an inhaler.
Right.
That's insane. So yeah, people who don't know, you know, you have to find somebody you can trust and actually looks out for you.
That would be one of those instances where you're talking about the inhaler. That would be a key item that I would make sure and figure out how that's covered originally for stuff.
Super important.
People with diabetes, certain types of issues and ailments and stuff. Those are the things we focus in on. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just imagining as we get to like August, usually we send an email to get an email, and it's like in 10 days, you got to make the decision. Then the next week, it's like 48 hours from now, you got to finalize and have it done. Point being, as my tendency for procrastination, and a lot of people's tendency for procrastination, I think one of the best things to do would be, and I like to sit down and have lunch with you, go to the insurance broker.
Right.
I think that's the best information that you gave today is, I never thought about that. Just go and have lunch with my insurance broker and sit down and say, here's where I'm at. Here's what prescriptions I'm on. Here's where I'm at health-wise. What do you recommend? I mean, here's my tendencies too. I get the PPO, but I procrastinate about going, and I always push everything off. So do I really want that?
Right.
You know, so
Right.
it's...
and then are you overpaying, or is there a better plan you could be getting for the exact same amount of money?
yeah, so... No, it's just really cool. It's exciting.
And they have that graph, and I'm going to see I'm going to tell you what he's seeing is the packet we receive is that, yes, we have HAP. Yes, I know we have HAP, but the plan itself, I can't tell you because there's boxes and it just gives you enough information to compare the four. And you're like, that sounds good, because there's no education that we are giving ourselves and asking the right questions to professionals like yourself.
Number one thing I like to do, because I deal with a lot of HR, is I empower my HR directors so that their employees are not smarter than them. Because, you know, employees are on Google and they're looking up stuff and they're finding all types of things. They come to HR and they bombard them with things. So I like to put as much energy as I can into my HR people so that they begin to understand what's going on, and they can easily be like, nope, this is not how this works. This is how this works. And then it's kind of a twofold for me, because when they end up leaving, they go somewhere else. They're like, hey, Sonny, you need to get in here and come, because they don't know what the heck's going on with stuff. So I put a lot of knowledge and information into the people I talk to on a regular basis so that they can begin to understand how those plans work and whatever it is that they need.
Sonny, it sounds like you need to start your own podcast because you make
No.
insurance, health insurance
Absolutely.
sexy.
Nope.
So.
He knows
Nope,
his stuff.
absolutely not.
We're going to have you come back. 'Cause this is a lot.
Back to divorce. What would you tell people right now that are either considering a divorce or going through a divorce? What should they be thinking about? What are some questions? What do they need to look at, and how can you help them?
So the main thing is that if they have any kind of medical issues for anything that they know that's existing for stuff, we need to make sure that that is consistent. If they're on some kind of medication, or they have some kind of whatever, heart palpitation, whatever it might be as far as things, that particular process and procedures are consistent. Because if you're going to try to leave, let's say, a corporate plan that might have excellent benefits or extremely stellar coverage in certain areas, you might not find those same things in the individual marketplace. So you have to be prepared to make that transition, which a lot of times I have to talk to some of them and be like, hey, you don't have this plan that you had at the hospital per se anymore. All right. You now have to move to this individual plan, and there's a lot of holes within those things. So setting that expectation of understanding has to be the main thing. The next thing will be the cost and the prices. They only see, majority of employees only see whatever percentage that the employer doesn't pay. All right. And the employers pay 70, 60, 80%, whatever it might be, or they do a 50-50 split. So they have no idea what the real cost is of healthcare at any particular time. Well, when you go to Cobra, that's where Jeff says it's expensive. Yes, because you're seeing the real price plus an extra 2% charge on top of it for administrative fees for stuff. So setting that expectation is probably the number one thing, and letting them know there's a pretty high percentage chance that you will not be on the exact same plans that you're accustomed to for the last 20 years when your husband was CEO of whatever it might be. So you need to start there first. And then we need to start working with what kind of medications are they on right now? What kind of issues are they having currently? Where do they live? Are they planning on moving out of state? I mean, you can run into all these different types of scenarios with things, and then you just have to prepare them for it, because there's no like bullet that you could just fire and be like, hey, go over here, go over here. I mean, just how we change, things are going to change. So as far as preparing for it, just education and let them know reality.
Great.
With stuff.
And how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, just call Jeff. Jeff's got all my contact information.
Everything.
Jeff's
We'll have
got all my
everything at the
contact
end
information.
of the show and also in the comments.
Cool.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sunny, for joining us today, and I'm sure we'll probably like to have you on again in the future.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you for everybody for tuning in to another episode already, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank you.
one.
Okay.